Okay, so at the request of one of my subscribers, I decided that I'd go ahead and make another video about golf since she apparently loves my golf videos so much and just hangs on every new release. So now, frankly, I was going to make some other types of videos because there's been a lot happening in terms of politics lately and current events and things like that. And I kind of wanted to note on that. Things are just going out of control in some ways. Let me just kind of quickly brush over a few things. One, today I read about this mother and daughter that killed 5 people in their family, thinking, oh, gee, they asked to be killed. And this is yet another trend of, these crazy women murdering members of their family. And it's a disturbing trend, really, when you think about people murdering members of their family. But also, I want to comment on these MAGA idiots. And it amazes me how people can rage, just be borderline angry all the time. And then they see one little thing that sets them off. Like, one of the things I've noticed lately is people honking their horn when somebody does something that they don't like, on the road. You get this honk, and especially people, these morons from Pennsylvania. We see a lot of it here in Maryland and also some in Northern Virginia. But anyway, this whole thing is, look, people, when somebody does something that you don't like on the road, in a lot of places, honking or causing a disturbance or giving them the finger or some kind of crap like that is something that will get you killed. And you should keep that in mind because it does happen, especially in the West Coast. You do get a lot of road rage and stuff. It's not something you want to, incite, okay? Or, as they say in Baltimore, you don't want to incite someone to do something rash in response, even if you're right, because they'll say, oh, you incited me to do it or something. And people will do that. People will literally say, you incited me to do this. You incited me to do this. And a lot of times that's the argument. They'll come, in the court, or you call the police on them or something. The next thing they're like, I didn't like the way the person talked to me about the problem, and it's like, look, sometimes it's just not worth the trouble to deal with idiots. And you're dealing with an idiot when they do idiotic crap. So don't be an idiot in response and encourage them to be an even bigger idiot than they were at first. A lot of times that backfires on people, and the MAGA idiots are just as bad because they'll see somebody who says, does something that they don't like or whatever, like speaking Spanish, but it's not just speaking Spanish, it's doing something they don't like, they think it's wrong or whatever, and the next thing they know, they're going to act like a complete idiot behind it. And what kills me is why these people think that the nation needs more idiots, no matter who it is, especially idiots who think somehow that America, like the earth according to Genesis, suddenly sprung up full of white people and immigrants were 100 years behind the birth of the country. This country has been founded and has been populated and has grown on immigration since its existence, okay? And people tend to forget about that. Oh, what are you, you just can't, your parents just came off the Mayflower? No. Why are you acting like an idiot behind something you see, giving people crap because they speak Spanish? The story about a law enforcement guy, this guy in Montana, well, there ain't a lot of people speaking Spanish around here, so I wanted to check your papers. In Montana, you're going to check somebody's papers to see if they're a lawful resident of the United States because they spoke Spanish? What kind of nonsense is that? And it just amazes me that in these cycles of the mind of the quote-unquote conservative, quote-unquote right-wing, quote-unquote activist, whether you're a law enforcement agent or just an average public citizen, that you need to step out and into somebody else's shit because you think they're suspicious because they were doing something which is entirely sensible. If you're them, it makes perfect sense. Look, it's one thing if they're stealing something, if they're harassing people, it's one thing if they're literally causing trouble, but to interrogate somebody because they're speaking Spanish, or to give them shit or give them the third degree, that's just insane. We don't need more of that in this country. That's not how you make this country a better country. Okay? That's what we don't need here. Okay? So on and on, let me talk about this golf course. I've said my spiel about that. So I played Herndon Centennial today, which is a course which is in downtown Herndon. It's right off 267 Dulles Toll Road. It's actually off of Fox Mill Road, and it's in that between Chantilly, southeast of Ashburn. It's in a decent enough neighborhood, but you can tell the course wasn't there, and the neighborhood grew up around the course. There are a lot of houses around the course, a lot of roads that go right by the course. It's a decent course. I got out there at 3:30 today, and the guy was like, "Oh, you have to have the carts back by 5:30." So I played 18 holes, and I skipped, like, I didn't putt more than a couple holes, just get a feel for the greens, which were nice. Okay, they were slightly soggy because there was snow up here. We got this weird 8 inches of snow last week, and it all melted the next day, and so it's been kind of wet. It's a decent course. It's kind of like the course I played in Baltimore, where it's an older course. You can tell the trees are really old and really, wide and stuff, and the fairways are not too tight. The greens have lots of space around them. There's some swales and stuff. Actually, I think that course was harder because there were more tabletops. Actually, on Herndon Centennial, there were no tabletop greens. Some of the holes had swales. The back wasn't really that much harder than the front at all. And there's lots of space. There's only a few places around that had waste or any kind of trouble around the greens, except that it did have at least 2 or 3 big sand traps around the green, and the sand traps were nice. They were full of white sand and everything. Course is in good condition, even considering that it's late February. But they charged me $54 to play the course in winter, off season, during the week, off season at 3:30. I was like, holy Christ, $55 to play this course? The course is not worth $55. The only thing about it that's even reasonably, and the thing that's so bad, there are a lot of good courses around here, but a lot of them also are country club courses, like Trump Nationals down the road. There's several private courses around here. It's not quite as bad as Route 16, where there are like 8 courses on Route 16 that are either $90 courses or they're country club courses, but there are a fair amount of country club courses around here. But it is very convenient, just off the toll road, just outside of Herndon. Well, actually downtown Herndon. It's on the south side of, actually the north side of the toll road, but on the south side of downtown Herndon. And it's a nice enough course, but there is absolutely traffic. One of the holes, I think it's 16, is a par 3, and it plays to the tee box for number 17. And at the intersection of the tee box for 17 and the green for number 16, there is a 4-lane intersection, a 4-way intersection right there. It's worse than Twin Lakes, where 12 or 13 on Route 7, there's like a big intersection there because it's closer. It's not like 100 yards, 50, 75 yards off from the tee box for number 13 or whatever it is. So the course is surrounded on at least 3 sides by roads which bring significant traffic, especially during rush hour. And there's a community center. There's a playground. There's the W&OD trail is right, also cuts across, and that goes along the far side of the course, right on the other side of the bridge. So if you've ever run across the course on the W&OD trail, it passes 2 golf courses. One of them is 1757, and the other one is Herndon Centennial. I think you get to Herndon Centennial if you're coming from the downtown. You go west. You get to Herndon Centennial first, and then you go to 1757. So what do you get for your $55 with a cart, during the week in the off season? You get a course which is not too much different than several courses I've played that are older style courses. It's got rolling fairways. There are creeks that run through it. There's a kind of a big lake in the middle. And I think basically it's a nice enough course, but in no way outstanding. The course was in decent condition, even though it was February. There were very few sparse or even thin spots in the grass. However, there was no real long grass. The waste had been cut down and was at most, where there was waste, which was not often. There was only a few places where there was waste. That had been cut down to below knee height. And it just isn't a course that's very tight. Although there's enough trouble where you do have to be careful. You really can't spray balls all over the course. But at the same time, most of the course has some sparse trees in between fairways, but the perimeter of the course is OB, and in some places it's kind of tight. So there's no doubt that there's some trouble. It's not like a gimme course. It's not like a really easy course. It's certainly not flat, but it's not that difficult. It's a good beginner intermediate course. I think it's a step up from a beginner course, but not quite a difficult course to play unless you go out there and try to hit, amazing shots. And you certainly could hit yourself into trouble, but it's a fairly forgiving course. I would say it's a lot like one course I played in Baltimore, not the course in the hood, but the other course, which I can't escape. I think it's Maple something or other, the one off Northern Avenue. Although that course was certainly harder, the greens were much more elevated in places. There's a lot more downhill, and while the greens on that course were wide, big greens, certainly. This course doesn't have huge greens, but it does have greens that are big enough. They're certainly more than big enough, and it has a fair amount of traps around the greens, and the greens have some swale on them, but at the same time, they were soft and, kind of receptive today, and it was not like they were flat and huge, but they weren't that hard either. And I think it was, I really do think that in difficulty level, I'd rate this course about a C, but it wasn't as bad as some courses that I've seen. It was not as hard as a lot of courses that I've played around here, and it was not as easy as a lot of courses I played. I think it was a good mid-range course in terms of difficulty. A good course to come out and play if you're a little rusty and, you haven't, so it was good to come out and play on this course and, get some of my game back short. But on the other hand, it's not long enough to really be a lot of a challenge. It's not long enough. It certainly is not long enough. Let's see here. From the back tees, 6,100 yards. From the blue tees, 5,774. So that's up there with Goose Creek, but not anywhere near 6,500 yards. Certainly not 7,000 or 7,200 yards. So you can't say that this is really a tough course, but it's not a gimme course. I think it was a fun course. If I didn't know it was $55, I would have said, all right, fine. It's certainly in the off season it would be worth $35, $40. Except it was in good condition, even in the off season. The sand traps were all nice. They didn't have rakes out for all of them, so some people had come out there and left footprints. But the sand traps were basically in good condition for most courses, and I would guess that the course will be in slightly better condition. Slightly drier, certainly, and maybe some more length, but I don't think this is a course that's going to have any long grass. It has some waste. Maybe they'll let some of the waste grow up, but in no way do I really think this is a course where you're going to have trouble making shots or finding balls, even if you go off the fairway, unless you go off the sides of the course, because a lot of that's not just OB, but there's also a fairly tight fencing on the side, and then you're looking at people's backyards. So they really have, you've got the fairway, you've got about 20 yards of rough and some woods, and then OB, and then that's it. And a lot of times you don't even have the 20 yards. And so I think it's a good course. I would rate this course a B-, except for all the road traffic around the course, which I really think has to knock it down to a C+. This course just has too much traffic to be rated up with other courses like it that don't have this kind of traffic. It's just almost a carnival of traffic. So you really have to kind of play it and have thick skin in a sense. There was a guy I parked the car, and there was some idiot kid drove by, woo, and he's he's just driving by. And by the clubhouse, And you can usually tell when you play a course and some idiot drives by and starts yelling. You know that's happened to me like 4 or 5 courses. So a C plus. Herndon Centennial, good location. It's not way south, down 95. It's not way out in Winchester or something like that. It's not way north up 95 up near Baltimore. It's in a good location if you're in the Ashburn area, and it's cheaper certainly than the mess that is Brambleton or a lot, like Raspberry Falls. Certainly not in that price range. Certainly not Bull Run. Nothing like that. A good, for what it has, it's not bad. And I if it wasn't for the traffic, I'd give it a B minus, but it's gonna have to get a C plus.